Hello everyone, I'm Carly, and I bet that Theo Faber would also call me a fatback.
And I'm Sam. And similar to Theo Faber, I am also obsessed with several things. Cigarettes, marijuana, women.
And welcome to Read Receipts with Carly and Sam, our book-based podcast covering all the latest hits and some stories off the beaten path.
With a few fun and exclusive episodes mixed in between.
And guys, on the count of three. 1, 2, 3. I thought we would know. Happy Halloween.
It's not Halloween yet. But I mean, I guess it's in a week.
Effectively.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay.
Ready? Mind meld.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Happy Halloween!
It is officially peak spooky season, which means that it is finally time for us to start reading books as chilling as the air outside, or as chilling as we would like it to be.
Yeah, I don't know how chilling it is wherever you guys are.
Yeah, but it depends.
Yeah.
We'll see. This year it's gotten a little bit chillier.
That's true.
Than we expected.
Yeah.
And we are going to be kicking off spooky season by talking about a book that we have been dying to talk about.
Ooh.
The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. Michaelides.
You guys know how we are with last names.
I actually did try to look it up this
Did
time,
you?
Because I was like, I gotta stop disrespecting these people.
All of our authors.
Yeah. Don't ask about Ashley, though.
Not Ashley.
Look, we'll come back to her.
We'll get back to her. Yeah, needless to say, we will not be very silent during this podcast episode because we've got a lot to say about this book. I mean, there's a lot going on in this book, and there's a lot that had us, I think, questioning what was really happening. And
yeah. When we were trying to nail down this outline for this episode, it kind of became hard quickly because I think when you introduce certain aspects, I'm like trying to still keep it a little bit spoiler free until we give our spoiler warning.
Yeah.
But once you kind of realize certain aspects, you start to be like, well, what is real anymore?
Yes. So I think during our conversation, we were kind of like, oh, you thought that about this? I thought it was this. I didn't realize that, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, I think it's been a while at least since we have covered a book that kind of had us second guessing what was real, what wasn't real, which is typical of the like mystery, thriller, suspenseful genre. Mm-hmm. So it'll be excited to get into that, especially with spooky season kind of in our midst.
Right.
Speaking of, because this is a book-based podcast, we will be talking about a book, including characters, plot points, twists, turns, things we didn't expect, big, situations that happen in the book that we were kind of like, oh, wow, didn't expect that, didn't see that coming. So if you haven't read it yet and you really want to, this is your spoiler warning because we will be really diving in deep what we think about this book. You've been warned.
But before you hop out, if you want to know what this book is about, I am going to read the back of book summary, both for you people who might not be familiar and both as a little refresher for the rest of us. Alicia Berenson's life is seemingly perfect until one night when her husband Gabriel returns home late from work and Alicia shoots him 5 times in the face and then never speaks another word. Alicia's refusal to talk or give any kind of explanation turns a domestic tragedy into a mystery that captures the public imagination, and she, the silent patient, is hidden away from the tabloids at the Grove, a secure psychiatric unit in North London. Criminal psychotherapist Theo Faber is captivated by Alicia's story and jumps at the opportunity to work with her. His determination to get her to talk and unravel the mystery of why she shot her husband will take him down a path more unexpected and more terrifying than he ever imagined. Dun dun dun.
So that's kind of what's going on within the book. So if you're curious to read it, go ahead, hop off the podcast episode now, give it a quick read, and then come meet us back and discuss all of the twists, turns, and surprises that come along with the book.
Yes.
Speaking of the book, I guess we should also run through some of the kind of important main characters as well, because we do have, obviously, Theo and Alicia, who we talk about in the back of the book summary as being the main characters, the most important characters, I guess. But we also kind of almost have like an ensemble cast. There's a lot of other characters that kind of come into play, like Gabriel, Alicia's husband, and Kathy, Theo's wife. We also have Professor Diomedes, who works at the Grove with Theo. We have other co-workers of Theo's, like Christian plays a pretty important role, specifically to Theo. We have a couple of other characters in Alicia's life, like John Felix, Max, Paul. So those are kind of the important ones, just as a reminder that we will be talking about in the podcast.
Right, yeah. It really is a surprisingly big ensemble cast. And once you start reading the book, it's kind of funny to look back on because obviously with any sort of thriller mystery like this, you usually get set up, right? Like your characters, your suspects, potentially. And so I feel like that is how those characters, a lot of them were introduced to us as like, oh, we should be worried about them. And then really by the end of it, I mean, again, it's kind of a situation of like, it's hard to say if we should be worried about them.
Yeah.
And it's hard to believe like exactly how much of what is wrong with them is true because it turns out there's a much bigger bad guy in the story, basically.
Yeah, which we'll get into. But I think before we get into that, let's talk about kind of how we felt about the book as a whole. Like, what were your thoughts? Like, what's your review?
Right. So I ended up giving the book 3.5 stars. Overall, I enjoyed the book. And I think a lot of personally why I enjoyed the book is because I continue to be surprised by how much I like a thriller. I've sort of realized that maybe this is a bit of the same problem everyone is watching where like I get so caught up in like, oh, well, that was fun. And then I think about it more and I'm like, wait a second.
Yeah.
Maybe that had more to do with the genre than the book itself. But overall, I did think it was very like suspenseful and exciting. It was like a fun read. However, looking back, I did feel like, so it's kind of complicated for me. I feel like I heard about this book a lot from a lot of different people. And so I had a bit of an idea going into it that there was going to be a twist. And I will say that I think that clouded my enjoyment of the book a little bit because I was so on the lookout for signs. And so by the time that we got to the big twist, it wasn't like the most surprising for me personally. Like, I think that I maybe could have believed the twist if I hadn't been aware of that. Even though, like, I didn't necessarily, like, super peg it from the beginning. It just was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense, basically, once I got to that point. And also on top of that, I kind of felt like I wanted a little bit more out of this book. Like, I think I liked a lot of what was going on. But, for instance, when it comes to, like, mystery thrillers, I'm a little bit more of, like, a cozy mystery person. And so I'm used to wrapping things up in a bow a bit more. And so I kind of struggled with not having that clarity about like what exactly happened, what's going on, and that sort of thing. So I think that's where I stand with it, is that overall I enjoyed it, but I just kind of wanted more all around. More about like why Theo did certain things and why these characters were sort of involved in the story and their role in the grander scheme of things. Yeah, I feel like I could have used more.
Yeah. I gave the book 3 stars, and I think part of the reason I gave it 3 stars was because I kind of wanted to relate it to how I've rated the rest of our books that we've kind of covered on the pod. I think maybe I would have given it less, but there are some books that I liked more that I gave lesser ratings to, or less that I gave more ratings to. I don't know if that makes sense. So I feel like I had to kind of find a happy medium with how I've been rating books on the pod, and I felt like maybe like 2.53 is kind of where I lean with my rating for this book specifically. So like how you were saying, knowing that there was a twist coming kind of affected how you read the book. I had already previously read this book a couple of years ago when it got very big and like everybody was reading it and talking about how good it was. So I've actually already read it and then kind of skimmed through it and reread it for the pod with the purpose of kind of like finding notes and seeing if I could find, you know, certain moments or Easter eggs or where I thought the twist was gonna happen, like things that would hint or lead to the twist that, you know, we both eventually know is coming. And to be honest, I was very bored reading it that way. And I think it's because I knew it was already happening and I didn't really want to dissect it because I didn't really like it to begin with. I think there were too many things going on specifically with Theo that just like didn't line up, which I mean is to say that I think, you know, the author did a really good job with kind of the unreliable narrator situation where you were kind of questioning a lot of different things that he was doing or saying or thinking and feeling. And so it was hard to figure out who I could trust in the book, which overall really just kind of made me frustrated.
Right.
Which isn't to say anything was wrong with the book itself. I think it's just not the kind of book that I would like to be reading because I was just confused the whole time. Like I didn't know really what was going on. I didn't know where things were headed. So for those reasons, I didn't love it as much. But I think as a book overall, especially using that unreliable narrator trope, I do think the author did a pretty good job because it's really hard to figure out who you can trust in this book.
Yeah, for sure. It's so funny because I feel like I get tripped up by the unreliable narrator a lot in these sort of books. Even just like, you know, I think there are times where even if it's not exactly like intended, like you just kind of forget that like whoever your narrator is usually also a person too, and they're not gonna like exactly perceive things 100% accurately, sort of thing. I feel like it is a bit hard just how entrenched in Theo's life we were, being able to parse through what exactly was real and what was not. Like by the time you learn the full reveal of Theo's involvement in Alicia's life, it really changes things, and it's like I don't know what to believe now.
I think it also changes things because Theo's not very likable at all.
No.
Even if he were less unreliable, like even if he were more of a reliable person, he's just not very likable.
Yeah, 100%. It's funny because there are times where he does make a few comments sort of like almost addressing us, the reader, directly. And so it feels like he intended to build trust with us and was like trying to get us on his side. But I felt very skeeved out by him for so much of it that it's like, bruh, this is not doing anything for me.
Yes, yeah, there was nothing about him that I felt like I could trust. And then the more that the story went on, you find out that you really can't trust him. Like, even if he were likable, you couldn't trust him because he's a liar.
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah, I think that was a big contributor of, like, why I didn't really like the book in general.
Right, exactly.
It's hard to root for a book when you don't like the characters.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. I definitely felt that way. And it's so funny because, you know, part of me was like, am I just being overly critical as a person?
Yeah.
Or like,
I think we think that a lot, though. Anytime we're reviewing a book, we're like, oh, we feel bad. Like, I mean, it's not a bad book, but also we didn't like it.
Yeah. I'll be honest, me thinking about gender in books kind of comes up a lot, especially anytime I am reading from the perspective of a character that is a man.
Sure. Because
so much of the books that we read, I feel like, are from the point of view of a woman. So when this happens, I do kind of wonder myself, would say like if a man read this, would they be kind of team Theo and like really feel like they did trust Theo and didn't see various red flags? Like I feel I have been a little bit trained due to like sexism and things like that, misogyny, that even without the twist, I think they're just things that I noticed that I was like, this is not consistent. Like you're sketchy. And yeah, so I don't know if it's like I'm a little too feminist to like fully believe.
I'm sure there are aspects like Theo really believing that he's doing all of this for Alicia to like save her, you know, and tell her the truth and open her up to kind of what her husband has been doing to her. So I think for Theo, he really does think that he's doing the best thing that he could be doing. Does he go to a little bit of an extreme? Sure. I do think that there are men out there that would be like, yeah, has a good heart. Like his heart is in the right place. Maybe he's going about it the wrong way, but I do think that what he did was right. Like I'm sure there are men out there that would think that. And I'm not saying that I couldn't see that side, but I agree with what you're saying, especially as women. It's hard for us to kind of be on his side when he's doing all of this because he definitely has a really big savior complex in thinking that he is right. There's no room for his opinions to be wrong at all, which is a very, you know, toxic masculinity kind of trait.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, it makes it complicated, but I'm really excited to dig more into it and like talk about the details of what we noticed because boy, is there a lot to Theo, especially.
Yes.
I do really want to get into talking about Theo, especially personally, because obviously, as we've been saying, There are kind of things that we notice, but I want to talk about the things that I noticed personally. And I think immediately from the get-go, when you start this book, we really jump straight into Theo kind of talking about wanting to work at the Grove, him being really focused on Alicia. And I think especially because it is first-person narration, right? It really gives the vibe of like, dude, why are you so obsessed?
Oh, yeah.
This feels really weird. This feels like...
Yeah, for sure.
What are we doing here? So I feel like that was one of the red flags right off the bat. It's like, I don't even know who this guy is. And he's just telling me about how much he wants to work at this place for this lady.
Yeah.
And I think especially, it's not even just that, like knowing that it's like, this is a woman who went through something super traumatic and won't talk. And it's like, it's heavy. It's not like he's obsessed with like race cars or something, you know? It's like, this is a real person. I didn't love that. It took us like, what? I don't know, like 4, 5, 7 chapters for us to find out that he's married, on top of the fact that we like learn that he's obsessed with this other lady. And it's like, cool. Yeah. I'm surprised this didn't come up sooner if she's the love of your life or whatever.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, I just felt like that he really wasn't self-aware at all. Like he would be really judgmental of people and being like, they're weird and they're too nice and they're like, oh, they're old fashioned and I can't trust this person and blah, blah. It just felt like he didn't like anyone, honestly, unless they did something that he liked. And then he was like, it turns out, they were always a good guy.
Yeah.
Like Yuri, for instance, I think he didn't really love Yuri at first. And then the second that Yuri does something that benefited him, he was like, oh, okay, he's cool.
But that's why we didn't like him, right? Like, that's why it's so easy to not like Theo, is because of all of these things that you've brought up. Like, firstly, he's so obsessed with Alicia, and we have no idea why. Like, they have no connection as far as we know when we're first reading the book. So we don't know why he's so obsessed with this girl. And then, like you said, he's also very judgmental of, like, the people that he runs into in life. There are things that he brings up and says about them. And you also start to realize that maybe he's a little bit too judgmental of himself as well. So if there were any room to give him grace, it might be because we find out that he kind of grew up in kind of a critical household, and maybe he's just that way about everyone because that's the only thing he knows. And he's that way about himself as well, when he's talking about smoking cigarettes, about how this is an addiction that he needs to curb and it's like the worst thing in the world, and like marijuana, and he's a therapist. He shouldn't be doing this. Like, it's such a failure for him to be so obsessed and addicted to these substances.
Yeah.
So, there is that side of it that maybe we could, not me wanting to defend a man, but like, there is that side of it where maybe that's where it's coming from. And then similarly to his obsession with Alicia, did you ever at any point consider that maybe it was a challenge for him? And not to say that this is me in any way like defending that, oh, it's okay that he's so obsessed with her because he saw her as like a challenge to try and get her to like talk so that he could help her and fix her. But like, that's kind of what I was thinking of. Maybe that's why he's so obsessed with her. Like, is it a challenge? Like, does he see it as something that he can conquer, which feels like a man thing to want to do?
Yes, 100%. Because honestly, even though, once you find out Theo's backstory, of course, it's like, yeah, all of that stuff is terrible. But at least it did make sense in the moment of like why he was so obsessed. Because otherwise, it's like, this is a random woman that he doesn't know. And it's just like, she's in the tabloids and he's seeking her out. Like, that gives very stalker vibes, which is hilarious because, of course, we find out that really is truly what he is, on top of a lot of other things. But like, even if he does have the medical credentials to like maybe help her, just the fixation on her specifically, when like surely there are plenty of people out there who have similar issues that just aren't as public. It's just like, why do you care about this specific woman? Like, it's a little scary.
It did not feel like this man should be a therapist.
No.
There was a point where I thought that maybe he was lying about being a therapist. That like maybe that was the twist, that he was like obsessed with this woman, and for whatever reason, I didn't know at the time, but he was like obsessed with her for some reason, and to get close to her, he had to find a way to enter this, facility. So he was going to pretend to be like a psychotherapist.
Yeah.
Because I had a really hard time believing that he was a therapist, like licensed.
I can believe that because he just barrels in as like, if I just sit there she's going to talk eventually.
Well, it's not that he didn't do his research either, though. He did, in fact, research her whole history and stalk her family members and pretend to be, somebody that was like helping her doctor, like talking to her brother-in-law and talking to her cousin and meeting up with them after hours. So obviously he was very dedicated to the case. How did we feel about Alicia when we met her and started to kind of get to know her?
I definitely was a little confused about how to feel about Alicia. I think I was kind of also wary of her. The information that we were getting from her was really only through the perspective of the diary, in my opinion. We got stuff from Theo, but again, from the beginning, I didn't trust him.
Sure.
But I definitely was skeptical because at that point I still was a little bit under the assumption of, I think she must have had some involvement in her husband. I don't know. I didn't fully believe yet that she wouldn't have had anything to do with it. Especially too, I think that a lot of her earlier chapters had a lot to do with making hints to how she has a bit of dark side to her. And she talks about her mom's suicide and worried about that being something that's in her as well, her mental health issues. So I think that there was sort of enough ambiguity there that it was reasonable to be okay, maybe there's some truth to Alicia's involvement in her husband's death, potentially.
I was very curious about her from the beginning of kind of why she was being silent. I know we bring up Alcestis, the Greek mythology, that story and situation of how Alcestis chose to die in her husband's place, and then when she came back, she was also silent. So I knew that we were trying to make the parallel between Alicia and Alcestis. So in my mind, I never really considered that she had any role in her husband's death, other than maybe she tried to die for him at some period. I was trying to figure out where the parallel was there between Alicia and Alcestis. But as we get to know Alicia more as the book goes on and we read some of her diary entries, we do kind of figure out that she does maybe have a little bit of a dark side, and not in a vengeful way. At least I didn't think so in the very beginning. Mostly just in a way of she's been through a lot, right? Her mother's suicide, like you mentioned, and her whole upbringing and her mental illness. So I was very intrigued on how she got to this point, what the relationship with Alcestis was, and then also how she got to this point where she is silent the whole time. What really happened with her husband? It was just very interesting to read her story and kind of see that unfold. And I think those were my favorite chapters, honestly, of the book, was kind of her perspective.
Yeah, 100%. Because, the true mystery is really around that. And so, this is the closest sort of, I feel honest perspective that we get. And I do think it's really interesting that, we do get our nuggets of reasons to believe that, maybe Alicia could have been involved in killing her husband. But at the same time, it is very clear from the beginning that she loves her husband. She talks a lot about how good he is to her and stuff like that. And so it definitely is, it's confusing because it's well, how could we end up here if she does have such strong feelings for him? So I don't know. I was definitely intrigued by Alicia. I was a little bit distrustful, but not really in the same way that I felt distrustful of Theo, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what it is exactly. I just didn't like Theo.
We just didn't like him. Okay, so obviously we've talked a lot about Theo and Alicia and kind of how we felt about those characters, but I do think that their relationships with the other characters in the book should be talked about as well, because there's a lot of complexity as to what happens to these characters and how the plot and the story moves forward because of Theo and Alicia's relationships with them. Theo's relationship with Kathy, for example, drives a lot of, we later find out, his whole obsession with Alicia.
Yes, it's honestly kind of a precursor to his relationship with Alicia, because whenever he first meets Kathy and we get that story, he very quickly also becomes obsessed with her. They were in completely different relationships, both of them. They end up sleeping with each other, ending their current relationships, and then moving forward. And he so clearly becomes obsessed with her because of all the things that he is when he's with her.
Yeah.
it just feels very like he doesn't necessarily like her as a person. I think he likes that it feels like she was kind of a hard get. Like he feels like, oh, I'm so cool now. And so like he has that obsession for a while. And then it feels like it kind of, it takes a turn basically whenever he finds out that Kathy's cheating on him. And it's almost like that obsession ends up getting transferred onto Alicia in the process of that whole situation.
Yeah. I think we start to find out, Theo has these obsessions with like cigarettes and marijuana and women, right? Like he is so like obsessed with Alicia, which we find out in the beginning, but then also going back and like finding out his relationship with Kathy, like we figured out that he's also kind of obsessed with her.
Yeah. I mean, he mentions too, again, when you mention like the weed thing, he talks about how he stopped smoking weed when he started getting together with Kathy.
Because he's obsessed with Kathy.
Right. And it kind of feels like he doesn't feel like he's enough on his own. Like he felt as though he needed, like, say, the cigarettes to like socialize with people. And then he felt like he needed the weed to socialize with people. And then once he had Kathy, he felt like in that situation, he felt like he was somehow enough.
Yeah.
So like it always seems to derive from this sense of like lack of self that like I think causes these obsessions. Like I think he feels as though he needs them in order, I don't know exactly what he thinks that he needs them for, but like I think that's kind of a little bit of where that obsession at least started with those sort of things. And like those, and clearly that's like a bad habit that seemed to take shape.
Yeah.
And I think maybe led to where we ended up with Alicia.
Yeah. Do we think that his obsession with Kathy is kind of what drove him to, when he figures out that maybe Kathy is cheating on him, to kind of like follow her around and, see who it is that she's cheating with, and then follow that guy home. And like, that's how he gets to Alicia, like, do we think that because he is so obsessed with her, that's kind of the character trait that led us to basically the rest of the story?
Yes, 100%. I think, again, it's like that tandem of like the obsession with his lack of self-confidence, because I think if you are a normal person who discovers that you're being cheated on, you confront that person, you consider leaving that person, you talk it through at the very least, but instead he chooses not to bring it up to her and instead in secret follow her.
Yeah.
And then it turns into a whole thing. And I think that is because he feels as though he can't bring it up to her, otherwise their relationship will end. And then it kind of turns into this whole toppling situation of like he becomes obsessed with like finding a solution. And then again, like, it transfers once he kind of does the whole thing where he follows Gabriel, then discovers Alicia, that like, I can't really necessarily say it's exactly the same, I need Alicia type thing, the way that he feels as though he might need a Kathy. But like, again, I think maybe there's a pattern there where like, it was just really easy for him to sort of use that same obsessiveness in him to like, I don't know, move through that pain, I guess, or something.
Yeah. It does feel kind of interesting because, obviously we know that he has these very strong feelings for Kathy, but in the beginning it felt almost kind of normal, his reactions to finding out that she was cheating on him. You would imagine that somebody would either confront their partner if they found out their partner was cheating on them, or leave their partner if they found out their partner was cheating on them. And then obviously, we know Theo doesn't do either of those things, but I do think it's believable to have someone who finds out their partner is cheating on them and then decides to like maybe catch them in the act or like follow them. So there is a point to Theo's actions that is a little bit believable, even though we know and we've discussed that Theo is a very unreliable narrator and he has all of these obsessions and is clearly not actually in the right, even though he tries very hard to get us to believe that he is. But then we get to a point where he starts stalking Alicia, and I feel like that's the situation that, where was your head at? Why are we now transferred over to Alicia? And I do think that there's a little bit of like a savior complex there of like, oh, your husband is cheating on you the way my wife is cheating on me, so like I am going to step up and protect you.
Yes, I agree, because I think that, again, like you said, like even though it's not a healthy response to like start following your partner when you think that they're cheating on you, because again, like that derives from like a lack of trust, right? But once you get to the point where he starts watching Alicia, it's like, bro, what are you doing? And that in itself is weird. But then further, once he decides to break into her house,
Yeah.
as like the penultimum of like, I don't know what he thought was gonna happen. Like, it's like, bro, where is this coming from?
Yeah.
Like and that's the thing too. I feel like this is where I started to get a little bit confused. I mean, maybe not started is exactly the right word, but like, you know, this is something that confused me, is that whenever we got to this point, I was just like, you know, we watched him you follow these various people, and it's like, I feel like we are understanding his logic as to why he's doing all this stuff. Like, he starts following Gabriel because he starts thinking about killing him, which again, crazy, but like, at least we know why
To an
he's doing
extent,
it.
yeah, to an extent, again, still believable. Like, I
Yes.
could imagine that, like, especially, you know, we've talked about how Theo, in his mindset, can be very judgmental and kind of toxic as a masculine figure in this story. So I feel like for a judgmental, toxic, masculine man, it is possible to believe that, like, if, you know, you found out that your wife, the love of your life, was cheating on you with somebody, it is possible to think that a man would be like, I'm gonna kill that guy. Like,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, for sure. But it's truly like, I feel like once we get to the point where Alicia kind of enters the story more, like, I feel like we're completely left
I've
out of the
lost
logic.
the plot there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is why at one point in the reveal of this sort of moment of the fact that Theo was the person that was stalking Alicia and entered their house and all that stuff, this is also around the time that Alicia is talking, and she's talking to Theo and gives her version of the events, which she's purposefully lying to Theo about. And then Theo brings that to Diomedes, and Diomedes is the one that's like, I think that she is kind of placing her guilt on this third party that doesn't actually exist. Like, I think she's making this up basically because she doesn't want to admit her guilt or something like that. And I thought that was a poignant point in the story, because whenever we got that reveal then of Theo being the one that is involved in the story,
Sure.
I kind of thought that that made sense, that he's the one that's actually doing that exact same thing, that he has so much guilt that he has separated that from his own being and is placing it on some sort of third party, which again would make sense as to why we don't understand the logic of these actions,
Sure.
because they aren't consistent with Theo as a person that we know. But then it's so funny because we get that reveal, and then, like, I don't know, maybe another couple of chapters later, we get back to Theo's POV, and then he does admit that he knew this whole time. Like, he was aware and cognizant that that happened.
So where is this all coming from?
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
like, well, I honestly think that would have been a very interesting play, basically. I mean, I guess that would lead to more, I don't know, there'd have to be more later that
Yeah.
we have to explain. But, like, I think at least that would have made sense as to why he did that. Like, something kind of took over, basically.
There's just so much about Theo I think we don't understand, you know, and we've already talked about all of our faults with him, but it's just hard to understand him as a character as well.
For sure.
Yeah. Speaking of Theo and kind of his relationship with Kathy that drives the rest of the story, how did we feel about Gabriel and Alicia's relationship?
I initially, on the surface, didn't really think a whole lot of it. Like, I was pretty surprised when we got to the end, and then Gabriel eventually is like, I don't want to die.
Right.
So I was kind of surprised that he did respond that way. Kind of thinking about it more, I guess actually maybe their relationship wasn't as hunky-dory as Alicia was trying to make it out to be for us.
It's almost, I bring it up because it's almost interesting to think of Theo and Alicia, at least in this regard, are maybe two sides of the same coin, or like two different sides of the same coin. Just because, is Alicia in some way obsessed with Gabriel and her relationship with Gabriel? Because she always constantly talks about how good of a husband Gabriel is and how much he loves her and how happy she is in their marriage, which is all great. But with how we were talking about the very end, when push comes to shove, Gabriel doesn't say anything about loving Alicia or, I mean, wanting to die for her, which that in itself is understandable to an extent. But Alicia is over there on the other side of the whole situation, telling Gabriel, it'll be okay, like, don't believe him, I love you. And there was no kind of response like that from Gabriel. And I understand that the moment is tense. You never know what you're really going to do when there's a gun to your head. But still, there's no kind of empathetic response like that from Gabriel at all in that situation.
Especially too because of the fact that she is the one that's saying like, don't listen to him, I love you, blah, blah, blah. I feel like if there was at least another person prompting me and also saying those things to me, I would be like, oh shit, yes, I need to say my I love yous before one of us dies. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not like he had the opportunity basically.
Sure.
And he completely didn't take it.
Yeah. I also think even before that, throughout the story, you know, Gabriel's out late at night, and yes, he's working very hard, but he's out late at night, and there are just so many little things like that that are in place throughout the whole story that kind of led me to believe, even from the very beginning, that maybe there was this aspect of Alicia kind of being obsessed with him and kind of being obsessed with their perfect marriage that wasn't very perfect at all.
Right. I don't think that their relationship was as good as Alicia thought. Like, from her perspective, she's like, oh, he's taking care of me, blah, blah, blah. But, like, for instance, with the doctor situation, he didn't get her, like, a real... I mean, I guess I don't know exactly. I don't remember if Christian had his credentials when he started seeing her. But, like, at the very least, like, it's a doctor that is one of... I almost said Theo. One of Gabriel's friends.
Yes.
And therefore already has a bit of a bias
Yeah.
in Gabriel's direction, when Gabriel is like, I think basically that Alicia is crazy. She's
Yeah.
going through the same thing that she did before. And so Christian's kind of prompted on that side of things and is hearing out Alicia, but then immediately going to, do you think that you're doing the same thing as what happened the last time? Blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Like, you know, like, again, you're kind of setting her up for failure in that
Yes.
way and not really helping her the way that she needs.
Yes.
And also, whenever she even first tells him about, like, I think someone's watching me, he does not believe her.
Yeah.
And starts gaslighting her. And
Yeah.
it's like, I think you're just crazy, girl.
Yeah. Yeah, so it is interesting to see how those relationships kind of play out into who our like two main characters end up becoming in what we find out later is like the present tense. It's also kind of confusing because there are two, I guess, like timelines that don't exactly like meet up because we find out that they are separate timelines.
Yeah. That's what, okay. So whenever the cheating sort of chapters would come up, I thought that they were all fake. I mean, maybe not completely fake, but I thought at that point that Theo was maybe getting so delusional that, like, they weren't real. Just because I feel like when you're following someone, it would be really easy for all of a sudden a different blonde woman to sort of enter the picture and you're like, oh yeah, that's Kathy. And it's like, oh wait, no, that's a different person, but you don't know that because you're far away. And then you see this random woman making out with a guy, and like, there was just always enough distance with things that I was like not fully convinced in the moment that basically any of it was real.
Interesting.
I kind of started to go down that rabbit hole, and then it was like, well, what is real? Nothing's real about this book. So
I feel like that would make it way too complicated.
yeah. So that's just how I felt in the moment. I do think that the reason why I got those red flags basically is because those chapters feel so disjointed from the rest of the book, and that is meant to be intentional, and it's because of the fact that they don't take place in the same time.
Yes.
So I think that that's why. It's just kind of funny that basically I caught that vibe and that's the direction that my head took it.
Yeah.
But it's a really good trick, I feel like, that the author had, because
For sure.
I did not see it coming that Theo was the guy that was watching Alicia personally. Like,
Yeah.
I thought something was weird. I thought that he was going to be driven to basically do something similar to what Alicia described the other guy to do, but I didn't think that it was going to be him.
I did kind of think that it was Theo, but then the timeline situation confused me because I thought everything was happening in a linear timeline.
Yes.
So I feel like for me, the bigger twist was the fact that everything wasn't happening in a linear timeline, and it did make sense for it to be Theo.
Yeah, there were times that I kind of did have that thought of like, what if it was Theo? But I think because I believe that the cheating was all happening in real time, I didn't think it could be possible.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, where would have that come from if he's only sort of being inspired to act this way now?
Yeah.
So yeah, especially because like it took place like 5-7 years ago or something. Yeah, it just seemed like way too far away in time for that to make sense.
Yeah.
But made for a really interesting twist, but not what I was expecting.
Okay, so obviously a big twist, I guess, in the whole book is the fact that the timelines don't end up like coming together. But I also think we have the big twist of like the whole murder situation and the fact that it was Alicia that did kill Gabriel.
Yeah. I really didn't think she killed him by the end of it.
Yeah.
Because I felt like kind of as the story was going on, basically through Alicia's diary stuff and all that, I was kind of starting to believe her more or like have a little bit more sympathy for her. And then especially by the end, I don't know, there were just like little things here and there that I was like, okay, this all lines up. I do kind of feel like she's innocent in some way. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, when we get to the end, it's like, oh, she did kill him.
Yeah.
I was really surprised.
I don't think I necessarily thought it was her. I don't think I necessarily thought it was Theo. I don't really know what I thought. But it was kind of a shock, like, reading that whole scene and kind of how that all unfolds. So obviously we also talked about the fact that we know that the man that ends up stalking Alicia is Theo. Mm-hmm. And everything is still kind of logical up until that point, until he breaks into their house, steals the gun so that Alicia can't like defend herself, and then like ties her up, ends up waiting for Gabriel to come home, knocks him out, ties him up. Yeah. Like, in what world did this feel normal to you, Theo? Like, this would be the next logical step.
Yeah, because honestly, because we got a lot of that information from Alicia herself when Theo is asking her in person about what happened that night, and she's giving her version of it, and she purposely lies about like specifically how he dies. But a lot of that leading up to it, as far as like someone breaking in, seeing like his reflection in like the window or something like that, and like him being there for hours and them just waiting for Gabriel to come home, it all seems so impossible.
Yeah.
So then when we get to the reveal that it's real and that it was Theo, it's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So that was really crazy. Truly, again, obviously, like, who knows what Theo was thinking in that moment, why he would do that?
Yeah, we don't really have an explanation. We never really find out, like, why he thought that this was a good idea.
It's not even exactly clear if he, like, feels guilt for any of it, or
right.
Like, I think he at least understands that it's not good, because whenever Alicia is talking, he like reaches a point where he's worried that she's going to say something and inevitably tries to kind of kill her.
Right.
The murder itself is really interesting, that he poses this question of like, do you truly love your wife? Like, would you die for her? You can choose right now which one of you I kill. And then basically Gabriel's like, I don't want to die.
Yeah.
Which again, like you said, I don't blame him exactly for that.
It's just hard to say what you would do in a situation like that, but I don't think we can necessarily fault Gabriel for not wanting to get shot in the face.
Yeah,
you know?
And again, not to mention in a lot of these like crazy situations, like this is very Saw, like not that I've ever seen Saw, but like,
sure.
You know, like these mind game type things. It's like, you can't really trust that even if you do give an answer, that it's going to be the right one. Right. So like, you know, I don't think that he's to blame for a lot of it, because if he did say like kill me, would Theo have actually done it? I don't think so.
I do think it's interesting Alicia's response to it all, though, you know, because we did talk about how she kind of maybe thinks the relationship is more perfect than it actually is, and in that situation she's telling him, Gabriel, I love you, like don't listen to him, don't worry about it, like we can make it out, I love you, I love you, I love you. And then to hear him say, well, I don't want to die. Like, being Alicia in that situation, I can imagine how heartbreaking that might be for her to kind of have this glass-shattering realization that maybe her marriage isn't as perfect as she thought it was. So it's interesting to how then maybe we get to like her possibly having that realization and then getting to a position where she shoots him in the face 5 times, you know?
Yeah. It's a pretty big leap.
And this whole situation of her going from this realization to then shooting him 5 times in the face, I felt like was a little bit more understandable than Theo kind of coming to his realization of, oh, I'm going to follow my wife, see who she's cheating on me with, and then follow that guy. And then now I'm going to, you know, tell his wife all of the things that I know. I thought that his obviously was a strange step of evolution of how he got to where he got to at the end of the book, but hers felt a little bit more natural, especially knowing that she has had mental health issues in the past, of how this betrayal might have led her to shoot her husband 5 times in the face.
Yeah.
How do we then feel about, so obviously Theo leaves the house at this point.
Yeah.
But then what, like 5-7 years later, as we talked about, comes back and is then like re-obsessed with her and like helping her, quote unquote, like trying to fix her, get her to talk. And he ends up, leaving this pretty decent job at Broadmoor to get this job at the Grove, which we know as readers is probably going to be shut down. But then we discover it's all just to talk to Alicia because he's like obsessed with her and wants to fix her or save her. So that also was very confusing to me of why let all of this time pass just to then be re-obsessed with her. Like, what is we're just not going to leave well enough alone?
Yeah, honestly, because he even makes a point, like, he got away with it. Like, he had involvement in all that stuff, and then she was the one who got caught, and, like, he got away scot-free. There was really no need to re-involve himself. I think that, again, it's that savior complex. He does also mention, like, he didn't expect her to kill him. Mm-hmm. I think that for some reason he thought that, which is, again, it's so, like, bro, like, where even are you right now? He, like, leaves the house and is like, well, I thought I showed her that he clearly didn't love her and that she could leave now because he thought that she could have been dead or whatever. Yeah. And it's like, you didn't communicate any of this. Like, what are you talking about?
I mean, I guess it's, again, possible to consider that, like, you didn't think that she would become a murderer.
Right. But you did leave her with a gun.
Yes. And already just breaking into the house. I mean, come on. Like, that, from the moment you did that, it was kind of downhill. Like, why are we doing that?
I think that basically all of this is his savior complex, like, oh shit, like, she's in a really bad spot. I feel like I need to do something now. But yeah, it is kind of weird, the timeline of it. It makes me kind of wonder, it might be interesting to go back to see exactly if there was a specific, like, trigger, basically. It does seem at the very least, like, when that Alcestis painting comes out, that, he mentions that he waited in line to see it. I wonder when that exactly happened, if that was the trigger. Like, it does feel like something had to have happened to kind of remind him if 5 years goes by before he makes an attempt.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. Again, another kind of like aspect of this book is the murder. And we kind of get to a point where we have to kind of figure out who did it. And I think we talked about this, like, I never really considered that it would be Alicia. So then we have all of these other suspects that are coming into play with Theo's very, like, skeptical research that he's doing. All of the people in her life. Did you ever consider any of these people had any involvement in Gabriel's murder?
I mean, I kind of did, only because, I feel like naturally in these sort of situations when you're being introduced to all these sort of suspects, you're like, well, okay, one of them's got to be it. Mm-hmm. So it is kind of crazy in retrospect that, like, it feels like none of them really mattered a whole lot, Like, I feel like, especially in my opinion, the one that was set up a lot for me was Max.
Yeah.
That was sort of the first point that I kind of started to question things a lot, because when Theo first meets Max, he seems like he doesn't really trust Max because Max calls Alicia a bitch, all this stuff. And I'm, at this point, I'm like, well, I don't trust Theo, so why should I trust how he feels about this guy? But then we get the chapter where Alicia then divulges that, like, Max tried to make a pass on her and, like, it made her feel uncomfortable and, like, he kind of tried to assault her and all this stuff. So then it's like, okay, so Theo seemed to be right about at least that aspect, that, like, Max is a creep. So Max especially, like, I think because of that, I really felt particularly sus of. And I was really surprised when it just felt like a real dead end. Like, he shows up at the very end and, like, screams at him from a distance, basically, and that's kind of it. And it's like, okay.
Yeah. It kind of felt, especially now that we're talking about it, it kind of felt like all of these side characters were really just that, like, side characters. Like, we're supposed to believe that they have some sort of involvement in Gabriel's murder because that's what Theo thinks. Mm-hmm. But then, obviously, we know and we believed reading the book that, like, Theo is a very unreliable narrator. So now, like, after having read the book and analyzed the book and talking about it now, I really feel like they were kind of just unnecessary.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel.
Like, I guess it was kind of necessary for like Theo's, skeptical research aspect of like he has to kind of like dig into her past and like figure out who she is. Like, I guess that kind of makes sense, but really just like trying to pin the murders on them didn't make much sense because it feels like the bulk of the story really took place between those four main characters that we, have spent the last however many minutes talking about.
Yeah, it feels like the only one that maybe would have mattered to introduce was Paul, because honestly, I never really believed that Paul had much of a motive, even though, like, yes, we find out that he was gambling and needed money. I just never got the vibe that he was much to worry about. But, we did get the information from him about how there was the whole situation of Alicia's dad killing her in a sense. So I do feel like that was maybe a more important aspect of the story to learn about that. But yeah, I feel like all the other characters, even Christian to some degree, I mean, maybe not Christian because he ends up playing a role in the really big end finale, but yeah, it just feels like all these characters we were getting set up and then nothing happened and it feels really empty.
Yeah. I also, despite not trusting Theo, I didn't really trust or relate in any way to any of these characters. Like Max, like we were talking about, didn't really like Max at all. Despite, obviously Theo, we talked about, is a little bit judgmental and kind of like jumps to conclusions. But even just like Max's attitude, didn't love.
No. Yeah, I was trying to give him a bit of a chance because like he seemed to care about his brother. But yeah, I think that it was kind of quick to be like, yeah, it feels like misogynistic the way he's talking about Alicia. And then, yeah, once we find out Alicia's side of things, it's like, yeah, this all tracks.
Yeah. Christian, I also didn't really trust him, but I feel like I didn't trust him because Theo didn't trust him, which doesn't really make sense at the end of the day because it's not like I trusted Theo.
Right. I kind of liked Christian a little bit only because I also didn't like Theo. And so it's like the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah. A bit. I just felt like they were both my enemy. I didn't like either of them.
Yeah. I didn't particularly like him, but I thought it kind of just made me laugh anytime that like Theo got really riled up about Christian. I'm like,
yeah. I mean, at this point, Paul is maybe the only one that I kind of liked because it felt like he could be a little bit likable. Like he grew up with Alicia and he had like a good relationship with her. Obviously, we find out later that he is kind of using her to some extent to pay off his gambling debts.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel like he had any malintent towards Alicia. So it feels like maybe he was the only really kind of semi-likable one of the group.
And then Theo calls him a fatback, and it's like, bruh!
Yeah, and then it's just, from there. And Barbie, too, I guess she was never really a suspect, but we liked her.
Loved Barbie.
We liked her.
Barbie was hilarious. Yeah, so you can't help but feel like that takes away from the story when it feels like there wasn't enough of a point to them.
Yes. It must have been a plot herring sort of device.
But we had like 5 of them.
That's fair. That's so true.
Yeah, like you gotta narrow it down a little bit. I think it's usually 1. Ask Agatha Christie. I think it's usually 1. So I guess Theo got a little bit jealous of Alicia that she got in 1 murder and said, you know what? Maybe I should do that too.
About time I actually murder someone.
The obsession groom was like, great idea.
Yeah.
But no, actually, I mean, it's crazy because, again, as he mentioned, he got away with that crime. He just had to get this girl talking again.
He really just couldn't leave well enough alone. Like 5-7 years, whatever we said earlier, had passed. Like, why?
Yeah, and he realized, like, oh, shit, maybe she would say something that could involve incriminating me.
But she hasn't this whole time. Why?
Honestly, I genuinely was upset because, especially by this point, we get the chapter where Alicia reveals the truth of what happened, and I just felt so bad for her knowing that Theo was actually there the whole time and all this stuff. Is just like, oh, this poor girl has been so misunderstood and is dying, ? It's kind of unclear exactly, like, she's in a coma, but it seems like she's probably gonna die.
I at first also was unsure of whether or not that was real. That was my Kathy cheating on Theo moment where I was like, is this really happening? I don't understand.
Honestly, a little bit, because it's just like, whoa, bro, what?
Yeah. And I mean, that whole situation of not only is she like in a coma / dying? But also, this happens. Everyone thinks it's an accident, and Theo has to go and point out that this is not an accident. Why?
Yes,
Why?
again, he could have gotten away with it.
Why?
If there are pills there and all that stuff, then why did you bother with those aspects if you were going to then frame Christian for it?
Point out the needle morphine situation for those of you who don't remember, of
Yes.
the fact that he stuck her with the needle full of morphine to cause her to go into a coma. Nobody had noticed that. The drug medicine cabinet had been broken into, quote unquote, and there were pills everywhere all over Alicia's room, so everyone just believed it was an overdose. But Theo had to go and point it out to, I guess, have this whole savior complex situation again where he has to be the hero, and then also at the same time frame Christian, because he has this whole thing
he's
against
like, "Fuck
Christian.
Christian."
But why? Why?
I'm just assuming that Christian's really hot on top of everything else, because it's like,
that must be it.
yeah, it just has to be a part of it. You just know that Theo has to be like a little weaselly, and then Christian must be kind of hot.
For some reason, I don't know if it's even in the description of the book, but he does kind of seem to me to be kind of like taller, broad shoulders, you know, like
Yeah.
I feel like he is kind of hot and Theo is kind of weaselly. Feels very like lanky and thin to me. I don't
Yeah.
know. That's why he did the whole thing. It's because Christian was hot.
It was because Christian was hot. That's always what it comes down to.
have been it.
I'm like, case closed. What
Case closed. I mean, really, what more is there to say about that?
more is there to say?
You know, we don't understand I'm telling you, again, from the moment that he decided to break into the house, every single decision he's made from that point on just doesn't make any sense. And then obviously we know that he gets caught at the end of it because of this decision.
Yes.
You know?
And thank God, because when we get the reveal that like he did try to kill Alicia on purpose, and like Christian does successfully get framed for a second at least. And they kind of reveal that like, yes, the Grove is closing, but we're going to open up a new place, and Diomedes recommended you to run it. Like, I was just like, are you kidding me? He's going to get everything he ever wanted?
Yeah.
Like, stop. I
Yeah.
cannot deal with this. So
It was too much.
yeah, I was just like, this can't be real. This cannot be happening. That everything just works out for this guy because he's a dude, and like we all just assume the best.
I was so frustrated by so many aspects of this book, but that like the last couple of chapters when this whole ending was kind of unfolding, I just like couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah. But I do think actually, so one of my favorite parts about the ending is obviously the last chapter, but more
Sure.
specifically getting to sort of revisit like the fact that everything we knew about Kathy really was like in the past, and so we got to really see what Kathy is like now. And it was so interesting, the fact that she is so closed off. They also mentioned, I forgot, that like they moved out of London and moved more into the country, and it seemed as though, from what I remember, that Theo was the one who like recommended that. So
Yeah.
like Theo's purposefully isolating her,
Yeah.
it feels like, so like intentionally trying to protect this woman without really caring about her and her needs.
Yeah.
And what she wants. It feels like he's really just put her through the ringer, and she's just sitting there on the couch like, what else am I supposed to do but watch TV? I don't have a job.
Yeah.
I don't like you.
Yeah.
Probably. And so it just really goes to show that like these obsessions are leading you to do things without considering any of the consequences. And like, sure, you still have Kathy, but like at what cost, you know? And then I also, of course, loved that he got caught in the end and it didn't work out. And the fact that he got caught because of the diary, and the diary was in the one place he didn't look, which was like in the back of the painting
Yeah.
that she did of him, because he didn't like how he was represented in it.
Yeah.
So it comes back to his ego.
Case closed.
Case closed.
Case closed.
What else can you say? Men ain't shit.
I am excited to get into more of the like thriller, mystery, suspenseful genre, and perhaps we may have more where the men are not exactly as they seem.
Oh.
Books.
Yeah, I haven't started our next one yet, so.
I know our next book is female focused. Our main character is a woman again. So, you know, and we love a woman.
We do. We support women.
We support women.
Rights and wrongs.
Yes, exactly. So I'm pretty excited to get into that.
Yeah, same. Because even though Halloween is over, I feel like it's still appropriate because it's fall.
Sure.
Keep the spooky season going.
Yes.
Why stop?
Why not?
Yeah. So we are going to be following up with our next book club episode, another thriller called Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera.
So here's our next book.
And if you are curious what this book is about, let me read the little summary for you. Lucy and Savvy were the golden girls of their small Texas town, pretty, smart, and enviable. Lucy married a dream guy with a big ring and an even bigger new home. Savvy was the social butterfly loved by all. And, if you believe the rumors, especially popular with the men in town. But after Lucy is found wandering the streets covered in her best friend Savvy's blood, everyone thinks she is a murderer. It's been years since that horrible night, and a night Lucy can't remember anything about, and she has since moved to LA and started a new life. But now the phenomenally huge hit true crime podcast Listen for the Lie and its two good-looking hosts Ben Owens have decided to investigate Savvy's murder for the show's second season. Lucy is forced to return to the place she vowed never to set foot in again to solve her friend's murder, even if she is the one who did it. Bro.
I love when Carly reads the back of the book summary for the first time on the pod, because then you get like a real life reaction of like her figuring out what the next book is about.
Yeah, all I knew was that there was a podcast in it.
I'm pretty excited about this book. I've heard some pretty good things about it, and I do like kind of the parallel of us covering it on our podcast and there being a podcast in this book.
Yeah, really interested and excited about this. I just simply have not read enough thrillers, I think, in my life, and so I can't wait to listen to this one.
Yes, I'm pretty excited to listen to this one. And if you want to hear our thoughts about it on our podcast, you can listen to the next book club episode on the book that comes out Tuesday, November 18th. Before then, of course, we will have another off the shelf episode where somewhat differently we kind of talk about all of the characters that we did not like from all of the books that we've read this year, and perhaps a couple of others. So that off the shelf episode will come out Tuesday, November 4th. So be on the lookout for that.
And happy birthday to my dad when the next book club episode comes out. I'm just now noticing. Not that he listens to this. I don't think I've ever seen that man read a book. So.
Oh, well.
But I'll let him know. There's a podcast episode out there for you.
Happy birthday.
Hopefully nothing weird happens that I would then be uncomfortable about.
Thanks for listening to the latest episode of our hit podcast, Read Receipts with Carly and Sam. All of the content that you hear in this episode was curated, recorded, and edited by us truly, with special thanks to the authors of the books that we cover and Pixabay for the music that we play. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you like to listen, and for more of our content in between shows, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. We love to see you guys interact with us on social media, so please, please, please get on there and follow along. Until our next read. Bye.